Good afternoon, everyone. It's still light, but I think you can do better than that. Good afternoon, everyone. That's a little better. My name is Jason Jarwin. I'm a person in long-term recovery. What that means for me is that I haven't found it necessary to use a mind or mood-altering chemical to deal with life on life's terms since November 29th of 2011. For that, I am truly grateful. Just a couple of things before we get started. Make sure that you have your badge scanned for each of the sessions so that you can get counted for being in attendance. No vaping or smoking is permitted in the hotel. Please dispose of your cigarette butts properly, and kindly silence your cell phone or electronic devices as to not to disturb those around you. Please do not disrupt the session by talking. And we may have an opportunity at the end for some questions. Also, you can scan the QR code on the back of your badge for any frequent updates to the information. So yesterday morning and afternoon, we had a lot packed in, and as well as today. We've heard from some great, remarkable speakers. We have a couple more that we want you to hear from, very short information. And one of them is a very good friend of Oxford House, and that is Patrick Kennedy. He wasn't able to be with us in person, so he took some time out of his day to have a conversation with Jackson, and we were able to have that, and we'll play it now.
Okay, I'm here with Patrick Kennedy, one of our keynote speakers for this Saturday afternoon session. I'm going to read a quick bio for Mr. Kennedy. He's former U.S. representative and founder of the Kennedy Forum. During his time in Congress, Patrick J. Kennedy was the lead author of the landmark Mental Health Parity and Addiction Equity Act, the federal parity law, which requires insurers to cover treatment for mental health and substance use disorders no more restrictively than treatment for illnesses of the body, such as diabetes and cancer. In 2013, he founded the Kennedy Forum, a nonprofit that unites advocates, business leaders, and government agencies to advance evidence-based practices, policies, and programming in mental health and addiction. In 2015, Kennedy co-authored the New York Times bestseller, A Common Struggle, A Personal Journey Through the Past and Future of Mental Illness and Addiction, which details a bold plan for the future of mental health care in America. Mr. Kennedy, welcome, and thank you for joining us and taking the time to speak to our audience.
Well, thank you all so very much. I want to begin by thanking Kathleen Gibson for her leadership. Big shoes to fill with Paul's passing, but Kathleen, I really admire all the great work and initiative that you've brought to this new role, and certainly I want to thank everyone here and who's celebrating the 50th anniversary of this historic organization. I want to congratulate all of you who've come from far and wide to be here. Let me just say from the outset, this is a movement, and your being here is not like some usual convention where you just pick up the latest pieces of information that you can utilize in your own efforts to improve your own Oxford House and the experience of your members and your peers. But of course, that's part of this. The other part of this is that you understand that you're part of a bigger whole. You're a part of a movement that frankly has taken far too long to take hold. I am an example of that. I, as was mentioned in my introduction, was the sponsor of the largest mental health and addiction bill in the last over 50 years. And yet, when I put my name on that bill as the sponsor, I was the youngest member of Congress from the smallest state in the country and in the minority party. So When does a bill that simply says that the brain is part of the body and that mental illnesses and addiction should be covered no differently than any other set of physical illnesses, when does that become such a stigmatized piece of legislation that no one in senior leadership wants to put their names on the bill? And it's left to the lowest guy on the totem pole to be the sponsor of the bill. So basically, I am the leader of this movement by default and not by choice, in the sense that no one else wanted their name next to the words mental and addiction. When I was in the United States Congress back in the 1990s as a freshman member working my way up. But in our movement, we're trying to pick people off the streets. We're trying to save them from going into jail, or make sure that when they come back out, they don't overdose. We're trying to do all of these things, and we're kind of in the last yard of people's often trajectory in their illness. We have not gone upfield or upstream to try to intervene and prevent a lot of these terrible tragedies that, as we all know in our own personal lives, have affected us and our loved ones. So this is the job for us in a movement, is to understand where we are. And I want to say to all of you, I am so grateful to be here as a person who is suffered from the disease of addiction. Most of my life, I did not get sober until I was 42 years old. I had multiple DWIs. And you might ask, well, how in the world did I serve the United States Congress as someone who had active addiction? And that's a great question. The fact of the matter is, I was able to serve because my constituents in Rhode Island's 1st Congressional District supported me. Real quickly, the reason I was able to put my name first on the Mental Health Parity and Addiction Equity Act was because in my first term as a state legislator in the state legislature in Rhode Island, I woke up one morning and found my picture on the cover of the National Enquirer. And my picture was right next to the fellow who was in drug rehab with me, named Rob Remy. And it was a big picture of him. And he, under his face, was my time with Patrick Kennedy in drug rehab. And of course, that was what I thought would be the end of my political career, because back in 1991, when this happened, if you were labeled a drug addict, you were done. There was no way you were going to have a political future. So for me, I thought I might as well pack my bags, go home. I was going to have a very short-lived political career. Something else happened. My constituents in Rhode Island were more upset at this guy, Rob Remy, for ratting on me than they were for me being a drug addict. And so I actually got reelected by one of the largest pluralities they've ever seen. I think it was so offensive to people that I got ratted out. The benefit, as God would have it for me, was that when I got elected to Congress, I didn't have that shame and silence and secret approach to my illness, because I had already been outed. And so when I went to Washington, I wanted to work on bills on addiction and mental illness, not just because I had been through it, but because my mom suffered from it, my father suffered from it, my brother and sister suffered from it. I had lost many other family members, cousins of mine, to these illnesses. I was able to advocate on behalf of something that I never expected to go into politics to advocate on behalf of. If it had been up to me, I would have kept it secret. I would have not told anybody. So when I look back and I say my gratitude list, I'm grateful for that guy, Rob Remy. At the time, I would have not been so grateful, for sure. But looking back on it, If it hadn't been for him ratting on me, I would have not been the sponsor of the Mental Health Parity and Addiction Equity Act, and I would have not had the life that I've had working in the field of supporting reimbursement policies for mental health and addiction. So essentially to the bill's main points, and I want you to understand this because this is key to whether we're going to get ultimately the things that we need paid for, paid for. So right now, as all of you know, we really only pay for these illnesses as diseases on the medical side. But as all of us know, we have a three-pronged illness: a physical allergy, a mental obsession, and a spiritual malady, otherwise known as, the social aspect of this. And the fact of the matter is, we need those other pieces of the continuum reimbursed in order for us to recover. I'm obviously speaking about like Oxford House and other supportive recovery places. And I know this is a touchy subject because we want to stay outside of all the other kind of medical and societal reimbursement strategies. We are people who help each other. That's the beauty and the spiritual nature of our recovery, is to help one another without any expectation for any remuneration or anything. But we can still have that. It's not precluding our ability to have authentic, self-supported, peer support, service to others, 12-step work. Doesn't preclude any of that. But what we want to do is bring to scale a funding system that channels dollars into recovery centers, recovery community organizations, in the same way that we pay for senior centers, right? Why should your taxpayer dollars, go to supporting all of these other public health interventions for every other illness, but spend nothing helping to prevent and provide support for people in their communities in the way that we know would be of maximum benefit to our fellows seeking stability for a chronic illness that frankly needs to be treated like a chronic illness as opposed to another acute episodic event, because these are not acute episodic events. I went to a dozen rehabs. So I know that the old model of rinse and repeat rehab, it all maybe cumulatively added up to the day when I finally made that decision to turn my life completely around. I left my job, even though I likely would have been reelected. I left where I lived, Washington, D.C. and Rhode Island. I moved somewhere else. I took the advice of my sponsor. I eliminated all the contacts in my cell phone so that I would not have any links to any of the old people, places, and things. And I went to 12-step recovery multiple times a day, every day, one day at a time, over time, till I started really accumulating days. And thank God I did something that I'd never done before, and that's pick a permanent sobriety date. So I have really seen the benefit of our movement, but as also wearing my other hat as a former policymaker, a member of Congress, I also see the injustice of the way our country, both at the federal, state, county, and local level, fail to do the things that we know could mitigate the number of tragedies that happen simply because we're not doing things we know work. So the parity law says whether you're inpatient in-network or outpatient in-network, or inpatient outer-network or outpatient outer-network, whether you need emergency room benefits or pharmaceutical benefits, all of that should be treated no differently than you would diabetes, cardiovascular disease, oncology, any other set of illnesses. And if they pay for it for these other illnesses, they need to pay for it for our illnesses. Our next frontier is being more open to what care pathways, journeys actually produce the best outcomes. Because for me, going back to rehab a dozen times doesn't produce the kind of desired result. The real challenge for me is if you could have moved up in my trajectory, said, Patrick, you're a very sick person. You come from you're a child of alcoholic, both alcoholics. You come from, a long line of addiction. Both genetically, we know these illnesses are heavily, heavily genetic. And of course, you add the environment. You're pretty much on the high risk category. This is what we would recommend. And then you would go through what works. How long does inpatient work? How long do we have supportive housing? How long do we need to have? Then you're really being systematic about doing what works for whom. And other people have other sets of traumas that impact them, other sets of physical characteristics that also provoke addiction that need to be treated holistically, as I know Stu Gitlow will talk about when he presents. So the idea is we just want a system that works so much better for our people so that there isn't as much suffering out there. It's a pretty simple proposition. I encourage all of you to know a little bit about, the policy aspects of these illnesses, because we ultimately need a day where we are kind of like these other major advocacy groups, like the AFL-CIO. If you're running for office, you know that you want the endorsement of the AFL-CIO, or if you're a Republican running for office, you want the endorsement of the Chamber of Commerce, or any other of these legal conservation voters or what have you. Why? Because these organizations communicate to their members, the people who are signed up because they're interested in these issues, and they want to find out where do the candidates running for office stand on those issues. And we need the same thing. We need to know anyone who's running for governor, mayor, county executive, senator, congressman, how they stand on the issues that are important to us. That has not happened yet, but I would ask all of you to keep that in the forefront of your mind. I look forward to working with you, a whole host of other people, like us, or fellow trudgers along the road of happy destiny, to try to figure out how we, in our time, build a new movement. My uncle, President Kennedy, was the first president to support a civil rights bill. And after President Kennedy was killed, his bill was, advanced by the Congress in memorial to President Kennedy. And that bill basically said, no longer is it okay to have separate and unequal treatment for people simply because of the color of their skin. And we need a kind of a medical, if you will, version of that, so that we're not discriminating against people because of bigotry, like the Civil Rights Bill, because of prejudice, like the Civil Rights Bill, because of fear and stereotype. And yet our country today is locked in prejudice, fear, stereotype, even with the great advances we've made thanks to COVID in terms of our understanding of these illnesses, and the fact that no one is exempt from them. We still have really systemic bias, as is in the case with race relations, applied to people with these illnesses. And as a result, people, as opposed to being taken care of, they're locked up in jail. The biggest mental health and addiction treatment centers in America are America's jails. It's still the case. So we have a big job to do on the systems approach, in addition to what we do in our individual lives to help our fellow. So I just want to say to all of you, thank you so much for being motivated into action. We're living in a time of great distrust to institutions, great disenfranchisement from people of all walks of life, and great fear and intolerance. But we belong to a movement which is about love and tolerance. And that spiritual nature of our movement is not only what will benefit us, but what will benefit our country. Because the polarization we're seeing in this country, it would never be acceptable in our recovery vision, because we are all about acceptance. We're all about understanding that we're not playing God, that we have to be equal amongst equals. We have to be in it together, that we only survive when all of us do well. That's a kind of mission that our movement is all about. Going back to when Bill W. and Dr. Bob helped each other, that was the miracle, as we help one another. That's how we recover, is helping someone else. How beautiful is that as a spiritual birth of our movement? And that type of community approach, which is embedded in the Oxford House, and which is why you should all really enjoy the 50th anniversary of this incredible organization. That's what our country also needs, is what you all are living out in your lives of service to your fellows. So thank you all so very much for the opportunity to present. I am sorry I'm not there in person, but I am certainly there in spirit. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being vulnerable to us.
Thank you very much. So our chairman of the board, longtime friend of Paul Malloy, and a very big supporter and advocate for Oxford House, couldn't be here, but he did want to send a short message, so we have that for you as well.
My name is Jerry Common. I am chairman of the board of the Oxford House Board, and I've had that job for quite a long time now. I'm talking today to tell you how impressed I have been over these years with the participants of Oxford House, how their personal challenges and their support for everyone else in the Oxford House movement has been a resounding success, and I congratulate you. But more than that, I want to thank you for all this time letting me be part of that and watching you meet challenges and help others. It is an honor, a privilege, and it has helped my life very much. Thank you, and have a great convention. My name is Jerry Common.
Thank you to both Patrick and Jerry for taking time out of their schedules to send that over. We're going to introduce our next panelist, keynote speaker. He's been a longtime supporter and presenter at Oxford House World Conventions, as well as a member of our board, and we are excited for him to present his information that he has, which is really fascinating. I think you will all get some good information out of it. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause for Stuart Gitlow.
Thank you. So when I was back in medical school, there was a young woman who was the mother of one of the kids I was treating on the pediatric unit. And I liked her, and we started to hang out a little bit together, and then she ended up being the nurse on the obstetrics unit on my next rotation on OB. We would spend some time together on weekends, and we went to a Renaissance fair together, and we would hang out in the evenings sometimes, and then we went on a 3-day trip up to Massachusetts for a Halloween celebration. And her cousin came along with us, also attractive young woman. We all shared a room together. And since life is not an XNXX video, we just went to sleep. So overall, I got busy. I went back to another rotation. We lost touch with each other a little bit, and then we caught up again, and she was engaged to somebody. And 30 years passed. We crossed paths again. And I said, what happened? How come we were never more serious with one another? And she said, oh, I didn't know you were interested. And I said, I picked you up every day after work to walk you to your car. We went on trips together. We went away for a weekend. I said, what didn't I do? She said, well, you never said anything. You're kidding. But one word might have made a difference. One word might have changed things. It brings me back to, I'm actually telling you this story for a reason. It brings me back to a question of how one thing that you say to a person can change their lives. It doesn't necessarily change their lives, might not have changed a thing. But one thing can make a difference. So imagine if somebody had said to you, before you ever picked up your first drug, that you have addictive disease. Not that you might have it, not that you're predisposed to it, but you've got it. If you use a drug, you will end up having whatever the rest of you had. Might that have made a difference? Not in all cases, but in some cases, maybe it would have changed things. Maybe it would have made it so the first time you were offered something, you said no. I have this disease. I can't do this the way everybody else does this. I have to say no. If you were told that you had the illness before you had it, would that have changed your lives? And that's the point where medicine is at right now. We are at this transition between population medicine, where we make determinations based on things that apply to the group as a whole, to individualized, personalized medicine, where we make our diagnoses depending upon you and you alone. We're at the point where we're going to be able to do a blood test and figure out whether you have a disease before you have the disease. Now, that's a little difficult to explain, especially when we're talking about something like substance use disorders, because right now, the diagnosis of addictive disease is based on behavioral issues. Do you use a drug more often than you intended to? Is there craving, etc.? You know the drill. But all of the behavioral characteristics that clinicians use to determine whether you have addictive disease is based on what you use and the way you use it. So we can't possibly say you have the illness before you pick up, because by definition, you don't. But that's not really the case. The case is the same as it is for other diseases, like diabetes. So let's talk about diabetes for a second. In diabetes, you have a disease where your immune system doesn't work properly. It attacks the islet cells in the pancreas. The islet cells are responsible for producing insulin. Insulin lets you metabolize sugar, so that when you eat something, the sugar is properly metabolized by the insulin created by the islet cells in the pancreas. If the immune system is attacking the islet cells in the pancreas, you will eventually get diabetes. But the truth of the matter is that you have diabetes at the moment your immune system stops acting correctly. We don't diagnose it as diabetes because your blood sugar is still normal at that point. But if we can identify those individuals early in the process, before their islet cells have been destroyed, we would be in a position where we might be able to prevent the damage that's done later on by simply targeting the immune system and not the whole glucose metabolism process when we do our treatment. So the goal is exactly what Patrick was talking about. Identify the disease and the process that leads to it earlier so that morbidity, sickness, mortality, death are less than they would be otherwise. Well, that's easy, so to speak, with diabetes because we know what we're looking for. We are looking for an immune system that isn't working properly. Well, lets us put our finger right on the problem. Say, well, there it is. I can point to it. I can say that's what's wrong. How do I do that in addictive disease when you've never used an addictive drug? If we're talking about cancer, cancer's another one that should be relatively easy, and yet pancreatic cancer kills almost everybody who gets it because we don't identify it until it's too late. Prostate cancer kills only a minority of those who have it because that's one we're pretty good at identifying. We can identify it so early that some people are told, don't do anything. It's likely something else in life is going to kill you before this does. It's nice to be able to identify things so early, but it's okay when you can point to it. There it is, I'm holding the cancer in my hand. These new studies, these new approaches that I'm speaking about, don't actually look for cancer. They look for the body's response to cancer. What is your immune system doing because of the fact that you have cancer cells in your body? By looking for that, we can identify cancer before we could otherwise identify cancer. So wouldn't it be great if we could tell by virtue of how your body is responding to the pancreatic cancer that you have pancreatic cancer, the problem of all the people dying of pancreatic cancer that we have now. So we are just on the verge of this with things like cancer, with things like diabetes, with things like high blood pressure and so forth, where we can identify them early. How do we do that with addictive disease? And I will tell you that there's a way that we can do this. So let me first talk about what we know about addiction. Addiction is a disease where we know about 50% of it is due to your genetics. It's not quite as simple as does your dad have it or does your mom have it, but somewhere in the family the genes are there to make it so that you will have addictive disease. Again, that's a difficult road to follow because genetic testing won't work to determine whether you have it or you have it or you have it. We can only use that on a broad population level and say some of these genes are related, some of them are not. But the best way of looking at it, I've found, is to use a metaphor, to use something that does stand out. It's a really bright day outside. Any of you who went outside today would see, oh, the sun is out there, it's bright, the sky is blue. Some of you would have walked outside and said, it's so bright, I'm going to put on my sunglasses. How many of you would do that on a bright day like this? We see about half the room. How many of you don't even have sunglasses with you? We see another half of the room, right? So what you guys are showing, what you're demonstrating, is what we call a normal curve. On the normal curve, half the people are up here, half the people are down there. Meaning, half of you find the sunlight to be so bright, so annoying, so irritating, that you put on sunglasses so you can turn the volume down. Half of you don't even notice that the sun is bright. Doesn't bother you in the least. We call these groups stimulus augmenters and stimulus reducers. The stimulus augmenters are the ones whose volume knob in their brain is turned up. The world is too annoying for you, too irritating, too distressing, too loud, and you wish you could turn the volume down. Those of you who raised your hands to, I put on my sunglasses the moment I went outside, what drug do you like? You like alcohol. You like sedatives. You like opiates. You like drugs that turn the volume down. Those of you who don't see the world that way, because the world is pretty quiet, you didn't even notice it was bright outside, you're stimulus reducers. For you, you like exciting things because your volume knob is set too low. You wish the world could be more exciting. You go skydiving, you go rock climbing, you tend to drive 90 miles an hour in the fast lane. People just are in your way because you want to move more quickly. What drug do you like? Absolutely. Meth. Turn the volume up. Cocaine. So let me ask you, does the sunglasses metaphor work with respect to the drug that you like? Some no's, so there are always going to be some. Mostly yeah. And the trick of it is to realize that what you're doing when you pick a drug that is your favorite is you're really trying to adjust things. You're trying to adjust things in your brain. You're trying to make your brain do what it doesn't naturally do. For most people are right here in the middle. Most people, when they drink alcohol, say, okay, I'm different. I can take it or leave it. Most people, when they get an opiate, say, I'm a little nauseous, I'm sort of uncomfortable, well, the pain's gone, all right, I'll go to sleep, but I hope not to have to take that again. Right? That's the usual response, but 10 or 15% go, oh my God, that's better than sex. Why do they have that response? They have that response because, yeah, it's better than sex. It adjusts things in their brain so that they feel better. Now, if you're feeling better as a result of a drug, that must mean that you weren't feeling good in the first place. If you're not feeling good in the first place, that's the disease. That's what's wrong. Not that you used drugs, not which drug you used, not the fact that the drug got you intoxicated or the drug gave you withdrawal or the drug did this or that. Nothing. None of that matters to what addiction is all about. What matters is, how did you feel in the first place before you ever used a drug? And how you felt in the first place was shitty. And so when you took the drug, you said, my God, this is the way I think the world is supposed to be, and you were right. You were correct. That is the way the world is supposed to be. You did, either with meth or cocaine or Adderall, you got to the point where you were supposed to be. Or with alcohol or opiates or Xanax, you got to the place you were supposed to be, and you said, this is correct. Right? A lot of things are normal curves. Right? I'm 5'4". I'm way down here. If suddenly someone made me 5'7" and I could reach the cabinets over the kitchen counter, I'd say, heck, this is the way it's supposed to be. So, you sit here and you say, where's the disease? And what most studies have done so far is they look at the drug and the pharmacology of the drug and how the drug works. They're looking in the wrong place. What they need to look at, when you look at a room full of people with addictive diseases, how did they feel before they picked up the drug? All right, but that's only part of what makes addictive disease, because some people are stimulus augmenters and some are stimulus reducers, and they don't end up with addictive disease. So what's the other part of it? The other part of it is something that triggers that genetic abnormality, something that makes it so that a person who might have addictive disease does have addictive disease. And for this, it is an environmental trigger. Now, the same thing holds true with many other diseases, diabetes, hypertension, and so forth. Diabetes, I know a pair of individuals, they are identical twins. Identical, their genes are the same, no difference whatsoever. One of them has diabetes, one does not. Why is that? One of them had something happen, we don't know what, but something happened. Maybe he had a strep infection when he was 7. Maybe he fell and hit his head. We don't know, something. So that he ended up with diabetes and the other one didn't. That's not an uncommon story in the field of medicine. Nor is it an uncommon story in the field of mental health or addictive disease. What it takes on the other side for addictive disease to develop is a failure in the relationship with the parent of the same sex. If you're a guy, your story is going to be something like this. You're 5 or 6 years old. Your friends are going to play baseball. You're asked to join in because they're down a guy. They know you can't play. You're 5 or 6 years old. You have no idea what you're doing, so they put you in right field. Nothing happens in right field. So you're standing there. And you stand there, and you're getting bored and sunburned and hungry, and you need to pee. Finally, a ball falls somewhere nearby. You figure I should get the ball. That seems to be the goal of the game. I get the ball, and I try to throw it, but I don't even know who to throw it to, and it's really far away, and the ball's too big for my hand. Still is. You throw the ball at the running guy because it looks like a good place. Well, that ain't right. And everybody blames you because, of course, your team loses the game, and it's your fault. You go home, you feel lousy. God, I feel terrible. I caused my whole team to lose the game. You go to your old man, you say, Dad, I feel awful. This horrible thing happened. Everyone's blaming me. It's my fault. Dad looks at you, he says, yeah, you know what? Same thing happened to me when I was your age. I'll tell you what, let's get some ice cream. Then we're going to go outside. I'm going to teach you to play baseball so that this never happens to you again. You feel great, right? Except you didn't have that dad. Your dad looks at you and says, Tommy, you really suck at everything you do, don't you? Right? And at that point, you've learned something. What you learned is, when I share my personal experience, my innermost emotions with someone who's supposed to give a damn, I'm going to feel worse. And if you get taught that repetitively, you lose the coping skill that most people end up having, which is personal, emotional intimacy with other people. Such that later in life, here you are, on my last piece of paper, feeling uncomfortable, and you don't know what to do about it. Can't talk to anyone because you've been taught that would make you feel worse. So instead, you go along in your merry way feeling grossly uncomfortable until suddenly one day somebody says, hey, try this. And you do. And you feel much better. Now you have a way of fixing what's been wrong all along. It's the only way to fix it because you don't have any alternative. And unfortunately, the drug doesn't work particularly well because each time you use it, it doesn't work as well as it did the previous time. So you have to keep going back, using more and more and more, and you know the rest of this story. But the reason why it took place was because partially you were genetically set up for it, and secondly, because you were taught not to trust other people. For women, the story's a little bit different, right? It's not a baseball story. Usually it's a story where you're getting molested. And when you go to mom and you say, Mom, here's what's going on, Mom says, you're a liar. Mom says, yeah, that happened to me. There's nothing you can do about it. Suck it up. Or Mom says, yeah, I don't care. And so you learn the same thing. So the bottom line here is that you're uncomfortable, and the only thing you know how to do is to pick up a drug because it's been made clear to you that that works at least temporarily. All right. What do we do about this? How do we get past it? Well, we have two techniques for dealing with it. The first technique is to deal with the first problem, the genetic abnormality. We could fix that if we could make you comfortable all by itself. Give you a drug that works to make you natively comfortable such that a drug is going to make you feel worse rather than better, or at best, doesn't do anything at all. Well, we don't have such a drug for marijuana or meth or alcohol. We do for heroin and fentanyl, right? We have Suboxone. Suboxone is essentially replacing one drug with another. The difference between the two drugs, though, is that Suboxone, to an extent, will not give you the repetitive issues that you have, continue to let you function in everyday life. It's an imperfect solution, to be sure, but it, generally speaking, will get you to a point where you can rebuild your life and get everything back that you need. Can you come off it or not is a different question. But if we're looking at this the way we look at any other disease, I don't expect there to be a cure. I do expect there to be a repair. Same as the way we approach high blood pressure. I can't give you a drug to cure your high blood pressure. I can give you a drug to bring your blood pressure back down to normal. You'll need to take that drug for the rest of your life. So it's not unusual for me to think about addictive disease that way, that I will need to give you a drug for the rest of your life to stabilize the genetic abnormality that's present in the illness. That part's okay, and like I said, we've got that drug for opioid use disorder. It works quite well, but we don't have it for any of the other addictive diseases. As for the issue with the environmental trigger, remember, the key to this disease is your lack of training in how to interact with other people. If I had a group of diabetics and I said to them, you know what? I can make it so that you can eat a regular meal. You never have to watch your blood sugar again. In fact, your blood sugar is going to go back to normal. The only thing that I need you to do is go into a room filled with people just like you, get up on the stage and say, hi, my name's Stu, I'm a diabetic. Let me tell you what's happened to me over these past weeks. They would jump up, they would hug me, and they would run to the next DA meeting. But they don't, because that's not an option for them. That's not a thing. The whole reason why AA works is because you don't want to go. If you wanted to go, that wouldn't be where the problem is. So the first thing that I always have to do is convince my patients that they want to go to a meeting. They say, I went to the meeting. I said, really? How far in did you get? I was across the street. I saw it was going on. That was good enough. I walked into the meeting. Were you early? No, I was late. Did you stay till the end? No, I left early. That's not going to the meeting. Did you raise your hand? No, I didn't raise my hand. Did you talk to anybody? No. Well, then you didn't go to the meeting. Go to the meeting again. This time, go to the meeting. Takes a while for me to get them to that point. Takes a while for me to get them to the point where they're going to talk to anybody. Why? Because they've been trained not to talk to anybody because they'll feel worse. What is needed, what AA is really all about, is reparenting. What's a sponsor except a parent, the way a parent is supposed to be? Responsible, consistent, on your side, not always supportive, but generally supportive, trying to get you gradually to be the best person that you can be. That's what a parent's supposed to do. But your parents didn't. So in AA and comparable A organizations, you've got a sponsor there to be a parent, to teach you how to get along with other people. Does that make it so you're all better? No. You're still uncomfortable. But at least now you have a coping skill for dealing with the discomfort. But what I'd like to do is get us to a point where we can say, you have the disease. Not you might have the disease, not you could get the disease, but you have it. You already have the abnormality genetically, and you already have the environmental trigger that made it so that when you pick up a drug, you're going to go downhill fast. Now, studies have already demonstrated that there are about 19 different biomarkers in the blood that we can see that are present in folks who have addictive disease. Here's where things get a little fun. What differentiates you from somebody who uses drugs a lot but doesn't have addictive disease? Right? We've all known the people. I have a lot of folks in my treatment practice who are alcohol use disorder folks, and they drink less than a lot of college students that I know who don't have the disease. We can't make the diagnosis of addictive disease based on how much you use or how often you use. Those are the last two things that I care about. I've had a lot of folks come in, I can't be an addict, doc, I don't even use very much. I don't care how much you use. That doesn't pertain to the illness. Most people don't realize that. But when it comes to teasing out what biomarkers, what blood findings are going to be present, what urine findings are going to be present, what biopsy findings might be present, in teasing that out, we have to differentiate the group of people who are using drugs as a method of dealing with their underlying addictive disease from the people who are using it as a lifestyle choice for whom they don't have addictive disease, right? The guy who has a drink at the bar every day on his way home from work, but doesn't have any other problems associated with his use. So in trying to derive these 19 biomarkers that relate, we need a way of saying they don't pertain to the people who just happen to be using the substance. They only pertain to people with addictive disease. And then comes the next question. Would those same biomarkers be present in individuals who don't yet have the disease? Well, how do I find a group of such people? How do I find a group of people to test to determine whether or not they have addictive disease? In fact, it's not all that hard. I just go to a group like this, and I say, you mind if I test your kids? Right? Because half of them are going to have addictive disease. Half of them probably won't. But if I test them now and then watch for 10 years, I'll have a pretty good idea. Which leads to a question. Would you let me test your kids' blood to find this out? Right? How about yours? Would you be up for having your blood tested to find out whether or not you have addictive disease by biomarkers? Yeah. A lot of yeses, couple no's. Okay, good. So generally speaking, it's something that we'd sort of like to know, right? I know if somebody said to me, boy, you know, Dr. Gitlow, you were giving that talk and you lost your train of thought a couple of times. I saw it up there. You want to get tested just to see if maybe you have Alzheimer's disease. And if somebody said, well, you know, you need a brain biopsy to figure that out, I know where my answer would be. Yeah, no, we're not doing that. But if you said you could do a blood test and tell me whether I have Alzheimer's 20 years before I ever show any significant signs of it, I'd be up for that. I think most people would want to know. Not everybody, some people might not. But I'd like to know, you know, how many years I can expect to be half decent when standing up here. So, you know, it's the sort of question where there's a lot to be answered personally, but there's also a lot of opportunity coming up medically in terms of what we can do in figuring out this disease. Let's say we test your kids, and your kids, you know, we get some numbers, and let's say we're able to validate the test, and we can now determine with accuracy and precision that one of your kids has addictive disease, but will never have a problem so long as they don't use a drug. Is that something you'd like to know? Yeah, right? So that would be pretty straightforward. How many of you think, raise your hands here, how many of you think knowing in advance might make a difference? Okay, pretty good. How many think, no, they'd use anyway just to test it out? Yeah, pretty good number there too. And it's true, right? We can't stop them from doing something. But there's a difference between just say no and just say no, and by the way, if you have this disease, you get to follow the same path your folks did, right? So I think there's some opportunity here. All right, so the bottom line with addictive disease, the thing to keep in mind is addictive disease is present before you ever used a drug. It was the discomfort that you were experiencing in your life, the discomfort that you ended up addressing through the use of a substance because you didn't have any other coping skill for dealing with that discomfort. When you think about treatment, when you think about recovery, stop thinking about the drug and start thinking about yourself, what it is that's important to you and how you feel on a daily basis. And if there's discomfort, how you get that off your shoulders and how you share it with other people as a means to feel better. And that's the trick in this illness. It's not about the drug. Put the drugs aside. Now, obviously, you've got to get through withdrawal. Withdrawal takes far longer than anyone is willing to admit. Most people will say to you, oh, yeah, withdrawal, the early withdrawal is done in a week or two. Yeah, the extended withdrawal takes a year or two, right? It's a year or two before your sleep is back to normal. It's a year or two before you're able to really think clearly and the fog is completely lifted. That takes a long time. So be ready for that if you're early in the process. And if you've been through the process and have gone all through it, and you say, well, why didn't anybody tell me that in advance? Largely because folks don't recognize that in advance. And as a second thing, if somebody ever looked at you at the very beginning and said, yeah, you're looking at 2 years of hell before you start to really feel better, well, then, you'd be less inclined to go through it. So, we try and downplay that a little bit, but the truth of the matter is, yeah, it takes time. And at that point, you are finally back to roughly where you began, uncomfortable. And now you can start dealing with the discomfort. That's what Oxford is all about. That's what the whole goal is here. But sometimes you just have to hear that spelled out. All right. One other thing, thank you, I got a little bit of time here, so one other thing I'm going to go through is the whole issue of the opioid crisis. Everyone likes talking about that. We've seen some real ups and downs and swings in how much the overdose issue has hit us and how problematic it's been. So the first thing to say about the opioid crisis is that it isn't. It's an addiction crisis. The addiction crisis has been with us a long time, right? If you go back to Prohibition, which now kind of amazingly to me is 100 years ago. If you go back to Prohibition of alcohol, Prohibition was our country's greatest public health success. During Prohibition, per capita use of alcohol dropped more than 50%, and alcohol-related morbidity and mortality dropped more than 30%. It was an incredible success in every aspect except politically and financially, right? And because of those two issues, Prohibition eventually, after a generation, went away. During Prohibition, there was a push that alcohol be used in domains where people felt alcohol might have an application. One of those domains was so-called medical alcohol. I don't know if this sounds familiar, but medical alcohol was something you could go to your doctor for a prescription for, and then you could go to a pharmacy and get it filled for vodka. And the pharmacist would give it to you, and you'd say, yes, this is for medicinal purposes. And off you'd go. Now, the moment Prohibition went away, the whole idea of medicinal alcohol vanished, gone. Because alcohol never had a medical application except for that generation. But independent of the fact that there happened to be medicinal alcohol available, most people recognized that alcohol wasn't particularly good for you and didn't use it. And so as a result, we had a tremendously healthy population from that perspective. Fast forward 100 years. And now we have this situation where people talk about medical cannabis, as if there is such a thing. There is not. No doctor, no physician, no medical organization has ever stood up and said, there is a use for medical cannabis, because there isn't. The only thing that is potentially useful are synthesized cannabinoid products that have been demonstrated to be of value in an extremely rare neurologic abnormality in children. So there are about 8 kids out there for whom a cannabinoid might be useful. Great, give it to them. We're done. You don't need to make this whole thing where the state legislators get up and say, I think our state could make some money here. We can raise taxes based on the sale of medicinal cannabis. Now, by the way, that hasn't worked for alcohol and it hasn't worked for nicotine. In both cases, states raise taxes by virtue of taxes that are imposed upon alcohol and cigarette sales. They never make more than 10% of what it ends up costing them in health-related consequences to use of those drugs. But those are different silos, right? The health costs come out of one area and the taxes come in somewhere else, and the legislators just sit there and say, yeah, we can make some money. But they're making money on our backs. And when cannabis came along, all of a sudden it was another source of revenue, independent of the fact that it makes people apathetic, less productive, and the taxes actually go down as a result of the loss of productivity. Why am I talking about cannabis when I just told you I was going to talk about the opioid crisis? Because the two are directly related. Over the past 20 years, as our country has pushed more and more to legalization of cannabis, we grow some pretty good weed. And our weed's better than Mexican weed. And instead of bringing weed in from Mexico like we always used to, we send them weed now. Our weed's better. Well, the cartels in Mexico said, we're not making money anymore. We can't send them the pot that we used to be sending them. We have to come up with something else. And roughly 20 years ago, they did. And they started sending us greater purity heroin, of such purity that you didn't have to inject it anymore. You could just snort it straight. Well, if you get drug like heroin that you can just snort straight, suddenly the 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds who wouldn't touch it before because you had to use a needle now say, this looks pretty good to me. And so suddenly, pure heroin starts coming into the country that wouldn't otherwise because we're making good weed. Justice Department realizes it. Washington realizes it. And instead of saying we should cut out this whole nonsense about marijuana, they start going after people for using drugs as if they're doing something wrong when they're not doing anything wrong. They're just trying to make themselves feel better. Because it's a medical condition for us. So that was one part. We started getting really good heroin that came in. Same time, companies like Purdue started to make drugs like OxyContin, long-acting opiates, which they said, like all drug companies say, this will be safer. Well, it is, so long as you don't crush it and then inject it. And of course, people discovered, well, if I crush it and inject it, it's long-acting, it's pretty strong stuff, much better than what we've had before. This is great. So all of a sudden, there was a drug available that sent us off to the races at the same time that this pure heroin is coming into the country from the Mexican cartels. At the same time, the pain community, the pain treatment community was saying, you really shouldn't underplay pain. Patient comes in, you should check their blood pressure and their pulse and their temperature and also measure their level of pain. Pain is like a fifth vital sign, they said to doctors. So we were sitting there taught that we should be looking at and addressing pain. So now we're looking at pain. Of course, pain is subjective. So if you came in and said, yeah, doc, I have this awful pain. All right, I can't very well test that, can I? You look like you're in pain. You say you're in pain. You must be in pain. Now, I don't have to do something about that. Oh, wait, I do, because I just received a letter from the Joint Commission that certifies my hospital or my facility. And one of the things they measure is the degree of patient satisfaction. So if the patient is satisfied at the end of my treatment, I get a gold star, and my facility gets a stamp of approval. So now you come in and you say, I have pain, I'm supposed to write that down, and I have to make you satisfied. What's going to satisfy you? So I write you a prescription for the OxyContin that Purdue just put in my hands. Now I start writing these a lot. I have a gold star, my hospital has the stamp of approval, and off you go with the prescription for opiates. And you take a lot of them over the years until the Department of Justice says, this is a problem. We have doctors writing these prescriptions for opiates, and they're writing too many of them. We have to shut them down. These are pill mills. So they go to the doctors who are doing nothing more than what they've been trained to do and shut them down. And now you're sitting out there having taken the prescription, having used the medication, and you have nobody else to turn to. The doctors have all disappeared. No one will write you a prescription anymore. But lo and behold, there's the heroin on the street, pure, from the Mexican cartels, who sent it here because we're sending them weed. And you say, well, I can go there, or I can go to this other doctor who's prescribing Suboxone. Oh, wait, the government has restricted that doctor. He can only write for 100 patients to get Suboxone. This was back in the day. It's not true anymore, but it was then. Doctor says, I'm sorry, I'm full. Can't put you on Suboxone. You'll have to go take methadone. Methadone means I have to get up at 5 every morning and stand in line outside in the cold or the heat and wait to get my methadone dose. I don't want to do that. Guy down the street just has heroin. I can just buy that. And that's what happened. That's the story of how we got where we are. Now, you'll notice I didn't say that it gave any more people addictive disease than otherwise would have had it, because it doesn't. It doesn't change the numbers at all. What changed is the ease with which people were able to get opiates. What changed is that instead of people of minority background, low socioeconomic standing, instead of those people dying, now the rich white kids were dying, and all of a sudden all hell broke loose. And as soon as that happened, as soon as it began to be independent of socioeconomic group, independent of minority status, now suddenly Washington starts to take notice. But the way they've gone about it has been ass backwards so far. Instead of studying addictive disease, instead of really looking at the causes of the problems and then fixing them, they start addressing it by doing things like shutting down pill mills, which is just going to make things worse, rather than retraining physicians in whatever way is necessary. So over the course of the past few years, we've been pushing and pushing and pushing, but we need help. We need the voices of folks with the disease to stand up. You guys are an amazing political force if you want to be, right? I mean, remember, the number of people in this country with addictive disease, it's 10 to 15% of the population. That's enormous. But I don't hear anybody in Washington ever saying, yeah, we really got to think about the addiction voter. It's important that we really reach out to that group and get their buy-in on this. You never hear that. But you can. You're a large enough number that it will make a difference if you work as a team, right? And I'm not saying Oxford House as a 501c3 not-for-profit should be, right up there in the front lines, but each of you individually should be on the front lines, working with your congresspeople, working with your senators, and making sure they recognize the strength and the numbers behind you, because it's there. So bottom line, speak up for yourselves, and people will be listening, because there's more than enough. And we need to make some changes. So the changes over the next few years that I'd like to see as a physician in this field is, first of all, get rid of the stigma, right? We still are like what cancer used to be. We're still like what AIDS used to be. People are like, I have addiction, right? And instead of just standing there and saying, yeah, I had breast cancer, or I had prostate cancer, or whatever it is, right? People stand up, they wear a pin, right? Where's our ribbon for addiction? How come we all don't walk around with ribbons? Right? You know, Delta Airlines has a pink airplane for breast cancer. Why don't they have a purple or blue or whatever our color should be? Why don't they have a color airplane saying, this is our addiction airplane? And of course, the first thing you think of is you can see the guys at Delta going, oh my God, we're not going to do that. You know, people will think this is this is the plane where the pilot's addicted or the steward, whatever. No, but there should be, right? There should be, if there's a plane for breast cancer, there absolutely should be a plane for addiction. Green, what is it? Green and blue, thank you. So, you know, this is important, right, for us to get out there and get rid of the stigma. The second thing that's important is to make sure people understand that this is a disease, not a behavioral choice. God knows I've been saying that for 40 years. But the thing is that people keep on saying, well, you know, they have a choice. Yeah, sure, just like I have a choice to eat. You know, eventually I'm going to have to eat. And the same thing holds true with drugs and alcohol for people with addiction. You feel the same way. Right? If I put you all into a room and I lock the doors and I say there's some food over there, don't eat it, it's poison. But the doors are locked. Time goes by. Eventually you're going to go over there and eat the food. And you'll see somebody eat the food and die. Somebody will still go up and eat the food. They'll say, oh, I'll eat from this other side. Because maybe he ate from that side and, you know. Man, I've had this exact thing. I had a guy who died of an overdose after buying drugs from a specific dealer. My next patient came in, she said, yeah, I buy drugs from that same dealer. I said, after you found out that the guy died from an overdose from that dealer, did you still buy drugs from that dealer? Oh, yeah. Why? What were you thinking? Well, I didn't have any place else to go. You know, you tell most people that story and they're like, guy was an idiot. I'm like, no, guy was hungry. Right? The food was sitting in the corner. They saw somebody die, but they're hungry. They have to eat food. He said, but they didn't have to use the drugs. Yes, they did. Yes, they did, because they had addictive disease. They have to use the drug. It's not a choice in the middle of it. You don't say to yourself, I'd really like to use the drug. It would make me feel better. But I have a choice. How many of you felt like you had a choice in the middle of things? Yeah, it wasn't a choice. So we have to get people to realize that part of it, to understand that this isn't something where you're making a lifestyle decision for yourself. This is something where you have no choice but to do it, otherwise you're going to die. That's the way you feel. Right? So we have to get them past that. One of the big ways to get them past that is if we can cross this biomarker issue and get to the point where we can test for it, just like we test for any other disease. If I can screen you for prostate cancer by checking your PSAs regularly, if I can screen you for breast cancer by making sure you get your mammograms on a regular basis, there should be a way where I can screen and test you for addictive disease and tell you yes or no definitively with no room for significant error that you either have or don't have the disease. If it becomes a disease like that, and it is already, but we just don't have the tests to show it, but if it becomes a disease like that, then we've got a way to convince people that this is not a lifestyle choice, it's something else. So that's why we so badly need to go in that direction. All right, come with me on that direction. Come with me and work through everything with your Congress people and your state reps and get the word out there as to what's important to you that Washington and our state governments do next in this area. Stay sober, All my best. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Are you all ready to find out who your new members of the World Council are? Well, sadly, the system broke. So, we have papers that are being printed right now. No, I'm kidding. Got him. Sit down, lion. All right. With a total vote, we're going to do the resident council first. So top your 3 new members. You'll have 2 alternates. So your first person, yeah, where's the existing? Okay. All right. Actually, y'all come on stage. Let's welcome to the World Council Dan Waldron from Washington State. Let's keep that energy going and welcome the next resident, Jose Contreras from Texas. Your last new resident to join the World Council is Jeanette Guerrero from Arizona. We get to have 2 alternates. We get 2 alternates. Your first alternate is Alex Atropoulos from Illinois. Where is he at? Is he in here? He's coming? Okay. Your next alternate is Demetria Hunter from North Carolina. We have 2 more. This is for your alumni and then alternate. Y'all ready? Anticipation is getting it. Welcome Paige Johns from Oklahoma. Keep that same energy for your alternate, Victor Estrada from Washington. I present to you your World Council members for 2025 going into 2026. Is James in here? Where's James McLean? Huh? Let's give a round of applause for Mr. James McLean, longtime board member and World Council Emeritus member.
A hip hop and a hippity.
She can't help it. Did you all have fun last night? What time did y'all go to bed? 2:30? Very late. Yes, I did too. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Jackson to cover our next item.
Okay, we have a couple item of business where you're going to vote, you're going to participate. We need your vote. So if you're leaving the room, you're forfeiting your democracy. Okay, let me say this before. Can I get everybody's attention? Arizona, please. We need AZ to bring the silence. Okay, we do have some business to take care of. A couple of housekeeping items. After this closes, everybody's going to go get dressed up for the banquet. They have to flip this room, so as soon as we get done here, we just need everybody just as quickly but safely to exit the ballroom so they can start turning this into a beautiful banquet-style event with the rounds. When you come back to get in line, because I know some of you are going to get here early and stand in line, bring your raffle tickets. If you want everybody to wait after the banquet for you to go upstairs and grab your raffle tickets, they're not going to wait for you. They're going to start drawing raffle prizes. So bring your tickets with you to dinner, okay? So everybody got that? Okay, one more thing. There was a survey that went out through the World Council, and we're going to announce the winners very quickly.
Hey everyone, so I me and Carl, randomly picked a winner out of the 351 people who took the survey. The winner's from Texas. Can I get a Zachary Eaton?
Zachary Eaton, you have won a prize? Okay. 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 We're almost done. If I could just get everybody to just focus just for a minute. Focus with me for just a minute. Okay, so the World Council, one of their responsibilities is to bring resolutions to the World Convention for you all to vote on. And your delegates from your area, you've been chosen to come because of your knowledge of Oxford House or your hunger for more knowledge of Oxford House and your experience in your service. So you are representing your area in this vote. So you have to think about your area and what's best for your houses, not maybe even your personal opinion. So keep that in mind as we go through these resolutions. And here's the process. So a resolution is considered, they talk about it, the council talks about it, and they talk about it, and they talk about it some more, and then they vote. Once they vote, it gets turned in to Oxford House Incorporated, and the leadership talks about it, and talks about it with the council, and then talks about it again, and then decides if it should go to the floor for the body to vote on. So we have 3 resolutions that we need to bring to the floor for a motion, for a second, for an opportunity for discussion or clarifying questions, and then for a vote. So we're going to go through these one by one, and I believe we have some microphones. Do we just have the one here? Is this the only microphone we have on the floor? Yes? Okay, so if a motion and a second is made and you have a question or a comment, we'll come up to the mic. And this is not an opportunity to filibuster or grandstand. We got to keep it moving. So if you have something to say that you feel is pertinent to the conversation, please do so. We want to hear from you. If you're restating what somebody else has said, please just stay in your seat. We don't need, sometimes people like to say the same thing somebody else said in a different way, and we don't have time for all that, okay? So the first resolution, I think we're going to put it up on the screen here. There's the clicker. I have the clicker. I'm going to put it up on the screen. Be it resolved that Oxford houses are strongly encouraged to only accept EES payments by money order, cashier's check, or checks from community partners. Do I hear a motion? Do I hear a second? Do we have any discussion? Let me briefly explain. This came about, if you read the manual, how many of you read the manual? How many of you have not read the manual? Let's see who's really honest in here. Okay, that's all right. That's okay. There's one in your bag. You can read it on the plane ride home. If you read the manual, it does not specifically say how to receive payments of EES for members. And we don't like dealing with a lot of cash. That's been a common practice for decades. Money orders, money orders, money orders. But it has never been in writing anywhere, so this is a good kind of common best practice that we can put in writing, so if it's ever contested by somebody who insists on paying in cash, you can pull out the World Council Manual and see, hey, hundreds of people, hundreds of houses thought this is the best thing to do, so we're going to follow their advice, okay? Do we have any questions? Any clarifying comments? We have one. Yes.
So I'm Jacob Harley. I'm from Sturgis Oxford House in South Dakota. The only, I guess, concern of mine is the wording of the very last part, or checks from community partners. Because like, what if one of our members gets kicked out from the house, right? And he wants to clear up his EES, but he doesn't necessarily have the money. One of his family members have the money, and they just want to write us a check so that he can clear up the rest of his EES. Now we're saying that that's not going to be an opportunity for them to have because it says community partners.
Well, cashier's check or money order. The family you can explain to the family members that we do accept money orders and cashier's checks.
It's just creating an extra step for that family to have to go through, though. So.
Thank you for your comment. Okay, we have another comment or question.
Hello, my name is Joshua. I'm from Lawton, Oklahoma. I just wanted some clarification, not just for myself, but for anybody else that might be wondering. What is the definition? What do we consider community partners?
It's a broad term because there's funding opportunities for the initial help to get somebody into a house. And if we try to specify specific, say it's specifically from this agency or from this partner, then it would restrict some other future funding supports. We don't know what's coming down from peer support or government support or opioid funds. We don't know any of that down the road. So we want it to be broad enough that the community can use that in their own way to say this is a reputable community partner. They want to send an initial check to cover the move-in fee for a member, and we're going to accept that because we work very closely with this community partner.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
It was broad on purpose with the future in mind. Okay, are we ready to, we have one more.
So we can't use personal checks? I pay with my personal checks.
This would discourage, yes, this would discourage personal checks. Checks bounce and cash disappears. Money orders are good.
Hi, my name is Derek. I'm from Topeka, Kansas. So I just have a question on the strongly encourage versus like should. Like, so if we strongly encourage something, then there's still, very room for somebody else to do something outside of that. So.
Right, this isn't going to be a policy that says your house has to do this. The World Council doesn't have the authority to go in and make policy for your individual house, but it's going to use strongly encourage to say, this is the best way to do it, so please do it this way.
Okay.
Okay, do we want to call for a vote? Okay, everybody in favor, raise your hand. Okay, now lower your hands. Anybody opposed, raise your hand. 1, 2. Okay, so it looks like we are 586 yes and 2 no. Write that down. Right on your phone. 586 to 2. We got to put in the number, right? All right, second resolution. Be it resolved that Oxford houses are strongly encouraged, there's that word again, to develop and maintain an emergency preparedness and response plan appropriate to their location and the needs of their residents. Do we have a motion? Do we have a second? Okay, now I'm going to clarify a little bit, then we'll allow for some discussion. We have had fires, we have had hurricanes, we've had tornadoes, we've had floods, and everything in between. Seems like every year there's something that's happening. Mother Nature will affect our areas, and we want each of your houses, your chapters, your regions to really take it serious to be prepared before something happens. Have the fire escape plan, have the tornado shelter or tornado supplies, a blanket and battery-powered radio and flashlights. Have the plan for where to meet in case there's a hurricane. Where are we going? How are we getting in contact with each other? So this is encouraging houses to be prepared ahead of any anticipated disaster. Yes.
Hi, I'm Katie from Kansas. I really like this, and I think it's, we do this in schools, right? Because we really care about the young children and stuff, and so I think it's really good to be considering this. I know that was one of the questions. Do you do whatever the question was, fire drills in your house? So just putting this in there for everyone to now consider, I think, is really, really smart, and it wouldn't add but, about 10 more minutes a month to your house's duties. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Enrique from Oxford House Calypso in Florida, and my question was, isn't this already covered in the chore coordinator's responsibilities when it lists that he is responsible for the safety and the planning of the house? I believe the verbiage is included in his responsibilities.
This would put, but that's not technically listed in the manual. So this would put the emphasis on the house as a whole to make sure everybody's on board instead of us just assuming that the chore coordinator is going to be the one that keeps up with the smoke detectors and the fire extinguisher and the fire rope, the ladder that goes on the second floor, and making sure that we know where everybody's cell phone number is that we can leave with it if there's a hurricane. This puts the emphasis on the house to take this seriously.
All right, thank you.
Hi, my name is Gay. I'm in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And I'm wondering if there is, because we get a lot of rain and hurricanes and all that stuff, so if there's an incident where a house is damaged, do we have a process where, I guess we would just go to another Oxford house, or would there be a place for us to go?
That is a different discussion, but the answer is yes, but it's specific to your area. We can get with you after this and talk in more detail about resources available internally and within the community to help in case something does happen. But we want to make sure that you as a house incorporate some of that and has the connections to the community and the resources available to you as part of your plan.
Thank you.
Move to vote? All in favor, raise your hand. Okay, put your hand down. Any opposed, raise your hand. Okay, 526 to 0 passes unanimously. Some people left the room. I had to lower the numbers. I've been counting the number of people leaving the room, so that's an accurate count. Okay, last one, and then we have another vote, so don't get in a hurry to leave. Be it resolved that each house is strongly encouraged to have and maintain a working printer to support residents with job searches, recovery-related documents, and house operations. Do we have a motion? Do we have a second? Does anybody want to talk about this one? You're about to be the most hated guy in the whole room. Move to vote. Pretty straightforward. You know what working printer means? It has ink and paper. Yeah, and yes. Okay. All in favor, raise your hand. Okay, lower your hand. Any opposed? Raise your hand. Are you opposed? We moved to vote. You missed the window for discussion. I'm sorry. So that passes 492 to 0. 36 people left the room during that resolution. Okay. Now, finally, we have, let me pull it up here. We have to look ahead to next year's World Convention in Denver, Colorado. September 10th through the 13th, 2026. And we have 3 themes to choose from. You'll get to decide what the theme is for next year, right now, right here, right now. So let's put the 3 options up on the screen. Number 1 is Welcome Home. If you watch the documentary, you understand where that comes from. Number 2, New Beginnings, Lasting Changes. Number 3, Where Responsibility Meets Freedom. Okay, and here's how we're going to do this. We're going to do this a little bit different. We're not going to do a raise a hand. We're going to do decibel level. So if you may like all three, but the one you like the most, you need to cheer for the loudest. So who likes Welcome Home? Wow, that was loud. Okay. Number 2, New Beginnings, Lasting Changes. Okay. Number 3, Where Responsibility Meets Freedom. Okay, we're going to round 2. Round 2, number 2's gone. So here's what we're doing. For number 1 or number 3, you only cheer for the one you want. Okay? Only cheer for the one you want. So who wants number 1, Welcome Home? Who wants number 3, Where Responsibility Meets Freedom? The 2026 World Convention in Denver, Colorado, September 10th through the 13th. Welcome home. Okay, bring your tickets to the banquet. There'll be a line outside. We'll open the doors when we're ready. Not down here.
My name is Paul Malloy, and I'm an alcoholic. Of course, I say to all my friends who had used heroin or opioids, if you had used Canadian Club in the beginning, you wouldn't have done that because you would have thought you were in heaven and had gone no further. One of the things that we're lucky is that we landed in an Oxford house. My luck is particularly great because this person, Jane, that I referred to, as you all know, my name is Paul Malloy, and I'm an alcoholic. My name is Paul Malloy, and I'm an alcoholic.